Hey, how you doing? All right, let's do it to it. Okie dokie, board editor, away we go. Let's see, what do we got here? There we go. Okie dokie. Okay. Excuse me, I just got a little frog there. Just a tiny frog. That's funny. Alright, perfect. This should be, oops, I gotta have a king for black. There we go. Make it into a study. Come on. Alright. Okay. Back to play, and away we go. Let me get a drink real quick and we'll get started. Okay. Alright. Sure. Bishop takes c6. Looks like it's most be best. It might be best because of its forking the rooks. Yeah. The likely continuations are, so if this looks like it's, oops, wrong one. This looks like it's best because of the fork on here. But there's a likely continuation of let me see, what could white play here? Yeah, this potentially you can actually play a sacrifice here. And then you can open up the position. It's kind of an interesting continuation here. That's the idea behind it. The queen, though, played queen takes. This was actually what was played in the game. But the whole idea behind this is there is no quick force win. then at that point. If we exchange off our bishop for one of the rooks, we're up in exchange, but is there a forced win? No, there's not. And there is no sequence of white shots that'll bring black basically down in flames, where black will resign. In a reasonable short number of moves, moreover, there is no way to force a trade of queens either. White would have to be careful not to allow black's queens to threaten mate on the C6 to H1 to A8 diagonal with the bishop. There's potentially a threat of mate along that diagonal. And yes, white should win, but white could also lose here. The alternate move is queen takes c6, which takes care of all that. You still win the pawn. Yes, you're not up material, but you still have a winning potential here. Then white can force a position that only two possible outcomes, and the winning chances are vastly greater than drawing chances. For example, if bishop, let me see, it's bishop b6. Oh, here. Bishop e6. Queen, oops, wrong one. Bishop b6, queen b5. Can't be right. Go queen b5, here we go. And black is quite lost in this position, surprisingly. This move here is an exclam. This is a side alternate move. Black actually didn't play that move. Black played bishop f5 here. This is what was actually played in the game. But bishop e6, queen b5, and what'll happen is it'll do an exchange of queens, and then after the pawn takes, then white has a passed pawn. Black and the two bishops are a winning advantage for white. So you have to think about to yourself, what is my advantage? What do I have to work with? What's my imbalance? Basically, like what Jeremy Silman talks about, the imbalance in the position. Does this imbalance give me a chance for a 2 result or a 3 result? And you got to make sure the 2 result is a win or a draw, not a loss or a win. Okay, alright, here we go now. This is a line continuation that they were talking about here. A takes B. Or after queen b5, queen e7, bishop takes rook, or takes, and then queen takes A, because now you're threatening to actually win back rank problems for black, and you're up a whole pawn. So, but what was played in the game? In the game, black chose the superior bishop f5 move, and he was met with, of course, queen b5, and then bishop to e4 was played at that point. But now I want you to stop right here as white. This is Dominguez as white, and I would like you to stop and see what you would play here for the best continuation of moves as white. You are white right now. So play the best continuation. And if you're watching this on a after it's been done and it's recording, put it on pause, and if you want to, or you can continue and keep watching us as we go. And so the idea is rook c4 here. What you're considering is a fork of these two pieces. You're breaking up the connection. You're also preparing next for the other rook to come in, and you're forcing the exchange at this point. This forces a liquidation into an easily won endgame. Black must reply with this move here. This is a force now. Takes, bishop takes, queen king takes. Black's knight becomes useless after it plays knight b4. The rook the rook will come to the b file, maybe a, and yeah, there's a lot of potential for black. B pawn will decide the game. Sorry, I mean the rook on c4 and the pawn on b on the b file will actually determine the game of the win. Rook a, what was actually played here was, let me see here, after 5. b6 was played for black. And then rook a, b8. There's a continuation line where rook to e7, rook to c7 here, exclam. This is a power move because you're not letting the rook the rook on e7 swing over to, you're not letting the rook here. That's where the rook would like to be, to barricade the pawn. But our rook blocks that. Or what went on in the game was rook a, b8. This is really the only way to continue. Rook d7 here. Now we activated the other rook. There's really now no way for the rook to get to b7. That's where the rook would love to be, getting to b7 to barricade the pawn again, but it can't now. h6, this gives the king a flight square. b7, and the interesting thing is I understand slightly why I kind of would have been tempted to have played that, but I'm to try to go after this pawn and lock down with the rook coming here. And then I don't know if it's winning or not. I think it's potentially playable. Maybe you have bishop c5, and I think the game's lost at this point. I think this is won as well. So b7 was played. And the following continuation would be bishop to a7 here. And now this is a good continuation. Or you have bishop. These 2 points are winning for white. And do you see how the grandmasters / masters make the idea simplified? They don't go for these complex. I know the idea that I wanted to play was this. This is more of a complex position. More complex, and you didn't have to go down that route. just by playing b7. You handle it more specific, more straight to the point. So try not to make the position complex. I mean, not too complex, but make the position easy to play for you. And that was kind of the idea here. And what we are looking at is the first move, bishop, queen c, queen takes c6 instead of bishop takes c6. Reducing the number of outcomes from 3 to 2 only works if there is a very good chance of a win. In the example of bishop takes c6 would have been bishop takes c6 is glam, bishop takes c6. If black had a strong drawing chance, then stronger than basically bishop takes c6 would have been superior despite the complexity of the position. Masters are also good at reducing 3 results to 2 when on the defense. So when they're defending, like what they're talking about is if the pieces weren't positioned so awkwardly, like this light square bishop here for black's really awkward. If the light squared bishop were like right here, then surprisingly that move, even though it's more complex, would end up becoming a better continuation for white. It's just all about the complexity. And so you have to just think about all that when you're making moves, that simplifying the moves down is a good idea, but just make sure the results are in your favor. Make sure the results are winning for that. You're not always going to be able to sometimes implement a 3 result to a 2. You have to think, how can I do that, make my position better. Okay, let's do another one here. Okay, perfect. So far it looks like it's really good. There's no reason for castling, so we're good because they've already castled. Opposite colors of all things. Oops, I have too many E's there. $19.89, perfect. perfect. We're going to look at it from black's perspective. This is just an ID. This is from, they're looking at white and black. White has just shifted his rook to g3. If black replies with c takes d4, white has bishop takes h7 and knight, and then there's a huge mating combination. So what was actually played here for black was, I will let you stop and give it a try. Okay, if you want to continue, stay with us and we'll show you what black played here. Rook takes d4, exclam. But this is the idea right here. If you're thinking about taking here, you have bishop takes. This is an exclam move for black. Knight takes. G takes f7. Forking two heavy pieces and threatening knight. So if the bishop's like, yeah, or I'm just gonna have him play a move here. We'll say we'll just say right here. We'll say to make a flight square. Here, check. And so you do there is a safe haven. So if we'll say that the rook doesn't move, and we'll just say that the bishop moves up here. There's this setup here, check, and then checkmating idea. That's kind of the idea that they were talking about. And if it doesn't work, and let's say that, like what we talked about, that they played this here, the knight could always just come and pick up an exchange there. And also there's potentially this move too. Rook takes, king takes, check, and then checkmate to boot. So potentially if you would just sacrifice a rook. And if the king can't move, so it has to take. So there's a mating threat, and the only way to kind of deal with that mating threat idea is by taking. Also, not h5, h6 would stop the idea of bishop, but then that's an idea, but it's still, you have a mating threat idea. I think the same idea works here. And there's mate, yeah. So this is kind of the only move that allows for that come down. There's also g6 that could be played here. Knight takes h7. King takes, c takes, d. B takes c. And then essentially bishop takes, and then if pawn takes, rook takes, and something like that. If queen takes c5, knight takes g6, or if queen c7, c takes b, a takes, and h5 exclam at this point is a continuation line that would be complex for black. Knight takes, rook h1, it gets involved now, so all the pieces are involved. And black may be okay in one of these lines, but it takes a lot of effort to make sure that. Black took the practical way out. He chose queen takes h4. After all, because if bishop takes here, knight takes, rook takes d4, rook takes d4. The killer attacks are the killer attack at small material cost. Play went queen e4 or e3. Knight takes g. H takes. It may be obvious, but white's attacking chances have been extinguished, and an added benefit is that black's moves are easier to find. Black's moves are a lot easier to find here because you can double up and threaten mate on d1. So it's not over yet, not over by far at all. So rook e4, bishop c3. Queen c3, bishop bishop d6. This pins the knight to the rook. Was it bishop d6 or bishop d5? Hold on, let me make sure I got this right. Hold on, oops, let's see, there. Oh, bishop d6, yep. And then white played f4 here. Rook takes f4. Rook d3. Bishop d5. Knight f3. Rook g4 to go after this pawn, exclam. Queen e1. c4 to attack the rook. Rook d4. Rook takes g2 at this point, and now there's two ideas here. There's this here. There's also that. After this, there's that could come down the pike. Taking the easy way out used to be considered lazy. Laziness. Masters know that moves like queen takes d4 save energy, but also half a point. With that, it's time to again for you to go. We're going to go to the next chapter. All right. Okie dokie. Let's see how we're doing here. Perfect. We got plenty of time. Wow. We're making good time. We're already done with 2 games. Sweet. We may be able to get more in. That's going to be fun. Let's get this set up. We're entering a new chapter called Comp. Chapter 8, Comp. Excuse me. Let's see here. It's funny. We're doing good. Just hold in there, friends. We got this. Oops, I gotta. There we go. Let's put the kings in. Okay, dokie. So 2 bishops, boom, boom, boom. 2 rooks, the queen, and then knight. Let me make sure we got this. Black to move, so we gotta make it black to move. There's no reason for castling, so because that's already been done on both sides. You kind of get the the idea when castling has already happened. Okay, let's get a drink and we'll start. Okay, Chapter 8, Comp. COMP. A master's superiority in evaluation and position is most pronounced when it comes to that vague term compensation. He knows comp when he sees it. Then considering a sacrifice, a master might look just 2 moves into the future. That's when he could conclude that he would receive a worthwhile goodies in return for the material he gave up. This must be sound. He may say to himself, he can stop calculating heat there. The non-master cannot. He typically has doubt about whether the sacrifice is worthwhile, less than worthwhile, or a blunder that will cost him the game. He feels like he has to look further, maybe 4, 5 moves or more into the future, hoping to find confirmation of the sacrifice's soundness. Consider this example right here that we're looking at. White has just played a book move, d4 or d5 to attack the pawn White did. It's another example of of a little tactic. Black can't play knight takes knight takes d5. Black can't play knight takes d5. This is actually a mistake here. Because bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, and then e4, and this costs a piece for our opponent, for us. So we can't play that. In the previous game, black retreated the knight to e7. We looked at that. Then white gained more space by c4, pawn c4, and basically locked down the position. This is a very similar one. Exclam. So if the knight retreats back here, c4 is an exclam move. This is a protected pass pawn, and it gains more space in the enemy camp. And the following would be knight to d2, and then potentially getting our rooks, and also maybe even knight b3 before into attacking the c5 pawn. That's an idea. And e4 is a playable move at that point too. Knight d2, e4, and basically you're just cementing everything. and was slightly better. Once again, little tactics was the means towards a positional edge. So a little tactic was the means towards a positional end and edge for white sometimes. But not in this game. This time black replies with rook takes rook takes d5. This is what was played in the game. Bishop takes d5, knight takes d5. The players who examined the game afterward fell roughly into two groups. The first group considered to be the learners. They wondered what black was doing. He only gets a pawn for the exchange. Where is the compensation? And the second group were masters. They wondered why in the world hadn't anyone played rook takes d5 before. A master saw that black gained several positional pluses. He ends up with a better center at potential domination of the light squares, and a rook good knight versus bad bishop matchup. All this comes to a slim material cost. And so rook f d1, knight b6, and if you were considering e4, then knight to f4, and the queen has to, we'll say around here, then the bishop just retreats, and you're still good at this point. You're okay. Maybe not bishop g, maybe I'm liking bishop e6 with the idea of bishop coming into c4. That's a strong continuation with the idea of a knight in there potentially with an attack. So interesting continuation. Rook d1, f d1. Black played knight b6. Black's hinted that he wants to dominate white's bishop and rook with knight to a4. White avoids that by playing a4 themselves. Excuse me, freeing the bishop. Well, a6, c4. Actually, sorry, after this, freeing the bishop. After all these moves, c4 frees the bishop. Black responds by securing a nice outpost by b4. Knight they could, but black actually played a5 here, exclam. This is much better. First, and then he's going to implant a knight on a4 or b4. So f6, f6. Where's oh, bishop c3. f6 was played. So, assuming the compensation is often as much as 90% of the evaluation, only 10% calculation. A master wouldn't have calculated this farther than looking at rook takes d5. In fact, all he might have calculated was seeing bishop takes d5, knight takes d5, and e4 can be met by knight to f4. In the game, so that's kind of the idea that what we went over with e4 and all that. E4 and then f4 and all that. That's what they would have seen and evaluated it as beneficial for them with compensation. So knight d7, knight b4, bishop takes, b4, c takes b4. White feels like they've accomplished a lot by getting rid of the knight. Trading down, in theory, is supposed to help make White's position better, right? Not so sometimes. This gave black additional positional pluses, a protected passed pawn, and a new target on c4 to hammer on. White has losing. White was losing soon after this. Rook d c1. Rook d8. c5. Bishop d3. The interesting thing is you probably were considering pawn takes c6, weren't you? And then the surprise of your life comes with queen takes, rook takes, and then bishop takes. And now you have, surprisingly, all your material has been won back, and you have an easily winning game. And if rook c7 were to be played, the bishop just retreats back to a7. Or you can even just sacrifice the pawn and get a winning position too, and just start escorting. You check, king comes up, and you're winning at that point. So you have to always be on guard. That's why bishop d3 was a really good move. Queen e1 was forced. Knight d5. Knight b3. h6. Rook a2, e4, to cement the bishop. And knight to c3 is soon to come as well, and black will be jumping all over white's position. Compensation is hard to appreciate because by definition it is imprecise. What that means, I guess what he's trying to say is that you have to be precise about it. Sometimes if you miscalculate it, you're in trouble. If this one, if it were precise, if you could look at a knight sacrifice like X move, like just that move that they were talking about, into the future and say white wins, it's not a sacrifice with compensation. That's a combination without risk. The sacrifice isn't real. There's Raduf in a game. Spielman simply put in Spielman's terms, he would say that it's not a sacrifice, it's a sham sacrifice. Sham, it means fake. It's not a real sacrifice. If you actually get a winning position from the sacrifice, it's not really a sacrifice. It's not really compensation. It's a positional win. It's not. It's. I guess that's kind of what the author's trying to say, is that it's not a compensation move. It's more of a winning move at that point, and you know where it's going, and you know that it's winning. So therefore, it's not really a true compensation sacrifice. I kind of see what Andrew Solstice is talking about. Oops, I almost forgot a knight for black. That would not have been a good thing. Black to move here. There's no reason for castling because it's already happened. So what we're doing for time. Beautiful. We should be able to have this one. Maybe we may be able to do one more. I'm not exactly sure. Black obtained a positional edge with one move. Do you see it? Stop it now and see if you could see it. Okay. Rook takes c3. The capture has been carried out in thousands of Sicilian defenses. Sometimes it's a sound sacrifice, sometimes it's unsound. But this isn't a real sacrifice. After b takes c, knight a2, black regains the exchange. So queen to d3 was played here. If rook b1, then knight takes c3, and you get the exchange back. So it's not really a sacrifice; it's a win of material. You get one. You can pick up one of these rooks here. So that's why queen d7. I mean d3, queen d3. Rook takes c1. Rook takes c1. Material is equal. Black has simply carried out a direct trade of a pair of rooks and knights. He did it for positional purpose to obtain a superior pawn structure. In other words, this is a pretty combination. Black won actually pretty compensation, sorry. Black won eventually by his pre-preparation positions in using his edge of of the pawn structure and the endgame, basically. In contrast, here is one position where a sacrifice in the Sicilian doesn't work. So we'll do one more. There's one more position here where the sacrifice doesn't turn out the way that the opponent wants it. So you're not always going to get like what they're saying, the sacrifice that works for you. Okay, white to move here. There's no reason for a castling because it's already happened. Hey, how you doing? We'll do this one and then I gotta call it a day on it. Okay. This could have been labeled a. Let me see here. Let me get this. Oops, I have to put in the name of the players. That would help to keep it all organized. Oh, we're going over compensation, which is the next chapter, and what it what it takes to become a master. Andrew Solstice, one of his books. So here we go. We're just going over a game today and to look at how compensation, how masters look at compensations in the position in chess. So it's pretty interesting for sure. That's what we're doing. Okay. This could have been labeled as a combination if the only reply was where in the world did I not put it in right? Hold on. Yikesies. Oops. This is not good. I set up the wrong game. Let's be efficient on this. I knew there was a problem. One of the most didn't work. Had a couple of games that we were looking at, and I think I set up the wrong one. But that's okay. As long as we get it right, that's all that matters. I always remember it's not how you start, it's how you finish that counts. Let's get 2 knights now. Okay. We're gonna make sure I have this right. Okay, that's right. Yep. Now this is right. We got her now. All I gotta do is change out the name. And then just ditch this one. There we go. Oops, I need to save this, switch it to black. There we go. There we go. Now we're looking at it from the right perspective. This would be labeled as a combination if the reply were rook takes c3. But queen takes c3 would actually be winning at this point. So what happens is black does play this. This is a really good combination sacrifice. So b takes c. If queen had taken, then knight takes oops, not d3. Oh, knight d4, knight d5 would be played here, exclam. And then if queen went back to d3, then knight takes here would win the material back. It'd be it'd be an equal position. Black would have 2 minor pieces for the exchange. And then if you're thinking something like this, yeah, and then you could take there, and take here, and then bishop could potentially take. So you probably wouldn't want to take there. You probably would check. King would take, and really an interesting position, about equal. But white did not want to go down that route, so he made it a sacrifice. And so knight takes e4, queen d3, knight takes d3, or e3, queen takes e3, knight takes c3. Material was not equal. Black had ample compensation for the exchange. 2 pawns, the 2 bishop advantage, and targets to hit on a2, c2. But this is far from a forced win or a positional 1 game. In fact, when a master spots a promising sacrifice, he may not even try to see if there's a forced win. All he needs to know is that the move is worth playing. That there is enough compensation. That there is enough compensation in the position. So we'll call it on this here. This was a really interesting position that black sacrificed material to get one position with this bishop here attacking the rook, and this knight about to take the bishop. So the compensation setup is there. And if you're not able, let's say the bishop moves, we'll say the bishop moves, say the bishop moves here, the knight actually has a knight to d5 here, and then if the bishop takes, the bishop could take, and so maybe not the best there. You know, you have to always plan out that there's always this discovery on this rook here. So black would just take a little bit of time to evaluate the position and find out if it was winning. So we'll go over a quick little, like we always do, summary and find out what we've learned so far. We went over a game where the section, yeah. The section that we were still working on was how to reduce the 3 results to 2. And we did a Dominguez game, and we looked at how that if you would have taken with a bishop in this variation right here, we'll go back and take a quick check at this. This taking with the bishop would have actually complicated the position, and this wouldn't have been as good as queen takes c6. Queen takes c6 simplified the position, made it a 2 result at that point. And then we'll just go through our other one really quick. This one right here, we learned that if pawn takes d4, the bishop sacrifice on h7 would be devastating and be one position. So black had to decide to simplify the position down, even at the cost of sacrificing the queen for some material, just to slow down white's attack. That costed a queen, but eventually black went about and ended up, I think it was either a draw or a win. I think it was I think so, yeah. It was considered, let me see, I want to make sure that I did this right. See if it's a win. It doesn't say. So, oh, white did lose here after this combination. After all the combinations were done, white did end up losing. Surprisingly, um, all of white's idea was based on a kingside attack. Black neutralized that even at the cost of a queen. So we learned that in that one. The next one that we learned was that a sacrifice sometimes has to be played to get an advantage rather than knight takes d5, which then bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, and e4 would end up winning a piece for white. A sacrifice of rook takes d5 actually really helps solidify black's game, even though it's based on compensation. That's what we learned. It made it a 2 result rather than a 3 result. And then the one game. Actually, sorry. That's sorry. It was compensation what I was talking about, not the 3 results. This is the chapter. The next chapter we went into compensation, and black got compensation for the rook sacrifice, and went on to win as well. And then the next one we looked at was this one here. Was in the Sicilian, rook takes c3, and it's not really a true sacrifice because you get the material back after knight a2. You win the material back. So it's not. This isn't really a true compensational sacrifice. So it's equal. But the next one the last one that we went over before we're logging off, which is knight, which is at this position, rook takes c3 is a legitimate compensational sacrifice for positional advantage. And the advantage went. And if white thought about, after taking, decided to take with the queen, knight d5 is winning. So it's all based on compensation. We'll pick up from there. We learned that you want to simplify the position. Make it so rather than a 3 result, 2 result, be able to analyze it, calculate it, and make sure that it works out. We learned compensation. Compensation, sometimes even if you have to sacrifice material to get compensation, it's worthwhile as long as you have a good valuation of the position, and that sometimes it's even winning when you do that, because maybe the rook isn't as good as the knight, and by getting rid of that knight, you actually get rid of your opponent's most forcing moves. So like compensation and evaluation, the one thing that we have to decide one day is, what are we going to do with the Lord Jesus? Are we going to receive him as Lord and Savior? And the evaluation is a choice to receive him or to reject him. And like what we talked about yesterday, that there really is no three three results. There's really only 2. Do you receive him or reject him? Because that's how simple it is. And I pray that you receive him as Lord and Savior of your life. But what Bruce Lee says, what we can take away from this, is we are learning to hone our evaluation skills, which that's what we do, is we take what we know, we apply it, and then we take it to the next step by willing to do something with it, which means share it or play it over the board. And then if you win or draw, you can talk to your opponent afterwards, and you guys can go over it. But remember to treasure your victories, learn from your losses, and remember that mistakes do not define you. It's how you handle a mistake that defines you as a chess player and a person. Also, we have to keep in mind the Team Chess Cruncher motto of hanging up your coats, hanging up your hats, sitting down and studying when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher, we as a team do. as Team Chess Cruncher, and that makes all the difference. And as Wesley So says, serve the Lord Jesus, and as I say, God bless, and I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening, and Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow. We'll keep pushing forward and improving. It does make more sense now, doesn't it, team? What Hannibal Smith said about even inside of a random position, there's always a plan. You have to evaluate even inside of a random position if there's compensation, and can you take a random position and change it from a 3 result to a 2 result of a win or a draw for you. And that just comes with practice, improvement, and that's what we're doing right now by getting our studies in and as I like to say, tooling up. So 2 thumbs up. Thank you for logging on and participating, and you know what, keep pushing forward, having fun, and I will see you next time tomorrow. So study, be blessed, and 2 thumbs up. Hoorah. Bye bye, Team Chess Cruncher.